and China in a hypothetical financial war. The concept of a financial war has moved from the pages of economic theory to the forefront of modern geopolitics. It represents a conflict fought not with tanks and missiles, but with sanctions, investment bans, currency manipulation, and control over the global financial infrastructure. While a direct formal alliance of America and Israel, waging a concerted financial war against China, is a highly speculative scenario, examining the dynamics, tools, and potential outcomes of such a conflict reveals the intricate and fragile nature of the 21st century global order, the American arsenal, unmatched but not unassailable. The United States enters any financial conflict with a position of unparalleled structural power. The cornerstone of this power is the US dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency. This exorbitant privilege allows America to wield the global financial system as a weapon. The primary tools in its arsenal are 1. Sanctions and entity listings. The U.S. has demonstrated its willingness to cut off individuals, companies, and even entire sectors from the dollar-based financial system. As seen with Huawei and various Chinese tech firms, being placed on the entity list can cripple a company's ability to acquire advanced technology and access international markets. 2. Secondary sanctions. This is the ultimate escalation. These sanctions threaten non-U.S. entities, European banks, for instance, with being cut off from the American financial system if they do business with the targeted Chinese entities. This forces the world to choose sides, creating a stark economic bifurcation. 3. Control over financial messaging. The Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, SWIFT, while technically neutral, is heavily influenced by U.S. policy. Denying a major economy like China access to SWIFT would be a nuclear option, effectively halting most of its cross-border transactions. The U.S. goal in a full-scale financial war would be to replicate, on a grander scale, the economic pressure applied to Russia after its invasion of Ukraine. Deplete China's foreign reserves, trigger capital flight, cripple its technology sector, and ultimately force political concessions by threatening economic collapse. China's defenses and counteroffensives. The Great Decoupling. China is not a passive target. For years, it has been preparing for this very contingency, building what economists call a fortress economy to withstand external financial shocks. 1. De-dollarization. China has been actively diversifying away from the dollar. It promotes the use of the renminbi, RMB, in international trade, particularly with resource-rich nations and Belt and Road Initiative, BRI partners. It has built currency swap lines with over 30 central banks and encourages the settlement of commodities in RMB, challenging the petrodollar system. 2. Domestic financial fortress. China maintains strict capital controls, which, while limiting the free flow of capital, provide a powerful shield against speculative attacks and mass capital flight. It holds the world's largest foreign exchange reserves, providing a massive war chest to stabilize its currency and economy. 3. Development of parallel systems. In anticipation of being cut off from Western systems, China has created its own. The Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, CIPS, is a nascent but growing alternative to SWIFT. Its digital currency, electronic payment, DCEP system, could eventually offer a state-controlled alternative to the dollar-dominated digital payment landscape. 4. Economic counter-leverage. China is the world's factory and a massive consumer market. Retaliatory measures could include embargoes on rare earth elements, which are critical for high-tech and defense industries, or boycotts of American consumer brands like Apple or Tesla, whose supply chains and revenues are deeply tied to China. A financial war would accelerate the Great Decoupling, forcing other nations to navigate a fractured global economy. The European Union, ASEAN nations, and countries like India and Brazil would face immense pressure, their economies caught in the crossfire. Israel's precarious position, ally, partner, and pragmatist. This is where the scenario becomes particularly complex. A formal, public Israeli alliance with the U.S. in a financial war against China is almost inconceivable under current circumstances. Israel's role would be one of a reluctant and strategically conflicted actor, not a willing combatant. The unshakable U.S. alliance, Israel's national security, is fundamentally tied to the United States. The U.S. provides over $3 billion in annual military aid, unparalleled intelligence sharing, and crucial diplomatic cover at the UN. In a direct confrontation, Israel's strategic dependence on Washington is absolute. The U.S. could demand that Israel sever its ties with China, and refusing would come at an existential cost. The vital Chinese partnership. Over the past decade, China has become one of Israel's most important economic partners. It has been a major investor in critical infrastructure from ports, Haifa to desalination plants, and a voracious consumer of Israeli technology, particularly in fields like cybersecurity, agri-tech, and medical devices. For a tech-driven economy like Israel's, cutting off the Chinese market and investment would be a severe economic self-inflicted wound. The U.S. security concerns. The U.S. has already been pressuring Israel to roll back Chinese involvement, citing espionage risks. The fear is that Chinese ownership of strategic infrastructure and access to dual-use technologies could compromise the security of U.S. assets in the region. A financial war would bring this simmering conflict to a boil. In a true financial war, Israel would face an impossible choice. It would likely be forced to publicly align with U.S. sanction, perhaps by divesting from Chinese tech investments and limiting Chinese infrastructure projects. However, it would do so reluctantly and with significant behind-the-scenes diplomacy to minimize the damage, hoping to preserve some level of economic relationship with Beijing, or to secure massive compensation from Washington. Conclusion: a war with no victor. A financial war pitting America and a coerced Israel against China would be a catastrophic event for the global economy, likely with no clear winner. The United States could inflict tremendous short-term pain on China, but at the cost of permanently undermining the very dollar-based system it relies on. Forcing the world to choose sides would accelerate the creation of a parallel, non-dollar financial ecosystem led by China, ultimately diminishing American global influence. China could withstand the initial shock through its defensive measures, but would face severe economic contraction, technological stagnation from being cut off from Western innovation, and social instability. Israel would be the classic small tree in a hurricane, its economy and strategic autonomy crushed between two superpowers. It would be forced to sacrifice a key economic partner to preserve its security guarantor, a decision with long-term negative consequences for its economic vitality. Ultimately, the very specter of such a conflict acts as a powerful deterrent. It highlights the deep interdependence of the modern world. The real war is not a declared one, but a continuous simmering competition, a battle for technological supremacy, control over future industries, and influence over global standards. In this ongoing struggle, nations like Israel are not soldiers on a fixed front, but valuable prizes and reluctant pawns, navigating a dangerous great power game where the greatest victory lies in avoiding a hot financial war altogether.